My name is Jack Meyer, and I met Sherry during our first year of college. Our mutual acquaintance suggested that we arrange a meeting, and when we finally met in person, I was immediately struck by her beauty. Sherry was not conventionally attractive, yet she possessed a certain endearing quality. He was 5 feet 2 inches, possessed striking blue eyes, and shoulder-length blonde hair. Her physique was slight yet perfectly proportioned. Despite her lack of awareness, I had already resolved that I would win her affections. The notion that I might not succeed never crossed my mind. Sherry and I began dating, and within a few weeks, we became a couple. Following our initial encounter, we engaged in sexual intercourse for the first time. The experience was profoundly impactful, and I developed a profound infatuation with Sherry and a strong attraction to her body. Neither of us was a virgin, but our experience was limited in scope, and we derived pleasure from each other's bodies. It is reasonable to conclude that we were deeply in love. We married shortly after graduation and purchased our first home, a condominium. Subsequently, Sherry obtained a real estate license and commenced employment with one of the most renowned agencies in the region. I leveraged my engineering degree to secure a lucrative position at an electronics company. Over the subsequent 13 years, we established a life that I considered ideal. Initially residing in our apartment, we subsequently expanded our family and purchased our dream home as our income increased. 8 years later, Shelby was born, followed 2 years later by Ryan. We adored these 2 children, and our lives revolved around them and our family. What, then, happened? I would have liked to believe that I noticed subtle indications that something was amiss, but I did not. I was completely BLBL and calm, living in a world of absolute love and trust with my wife. A fortuitous event provided the impetus for my awareness of the situation. Our daughter Shelby had fallen ill at school. It was Thursday, and shortly before noon, the school nurse contacted me to inform me that Shelby was indisposed with an ailment akin to influenza. At that moment, I was engaged in a staff meeting. I requested that the school nurse contact my wife. The nurse informed me that she had attempted to reach her at her place of work, where she was informed that I was informed that my wife would be unavailable for the remainder of the day. She attempted to contact us at home, but there was no response, so she left a voicemail. She then called my mobile phone, but it was sent to voicemail. I was therefore contacted because it was imperative that my daughter be collected as soon as possible. I apologized to my staff and proceeded to drive to Shelby's school as quickly as possible, where I collected her and returned home. Upon opening the garage door, I was surprised to see a car that I did not recognize parked in my car's place next to my wife's car. At the same moment, I experienced a sudden lump in my throat and a sensation of unease in my stomach. I immediately dismissed the possibility that my wife, the woman I love more than my life, could have an affair. However, I was compelled to investigate further. I exited the vehicle and attempted to prevent my daughter from discovering the car. I instructed Shelby to wait in the vehicle for a brief period. She inquired as to why she should remain in the car. I informed her that I believed there was an exterminator at the residence, spraying the house with insecticide, which would exacerbate her condition. I provided her with a false explanation, which was the first instance of deception I had ever perpetrated upon my daughter. I instructed her to lie down and await my return. Shelby expressed her displeasure, but I instructed her to comply. I proceeded to wait in the back seat, attempting to remain as inconspicuous as possible. I unlocked the kitchen door, hoping to find my wife and one of her friends engaged in conversation and consuming coffee at the kitchen table. However, upon turning the corner, I discovered the kitchen to be empty. I proceeded to traverse the kitchen and enter the living room, anticipating that she might be seated on the couch engaged in conversation. However, there was no one present. Then, I heard her voice. I heard a laugh, the joyful girlish laugh that I knew so well. It came from above, and my heart sank. The only rooms upstairs were the bedrooms. My knees weakened, but I forced myself to walk forward. Despite my discomfort, I was determined to find out. I proceeded up the stairs quietly, the carpet softening the sound of my footsteps. The first bedroom belonged to my daughter. The door was open, and when I looked inside, I found that the room was empty. The bed was made, the second door led to my son's room, and the door was closed. I began to open it, but then I heard my wife laughing again, this time coming from the far end of the hallway from the master bedroom. My heart began to beat rapidly. I slowly approached the edge of the door and listened. At first, I did not hear anything. Then, I heard the sound of the bed gently rocking against the wall, followed by my wife's voice. "Oh, Greg, it's so good. Oh, yeah, be my man." Then, a man's voice. "It's nice, isn't it?" "Yes, Greg, you know that's good. It's the best thing that ever happened. I've told you that 1,000 times. Not even your worthless husband, Jack. Please don't call Jack a wimp. Greg, that's not true. He just can't make me feel the way you do. He loves me very much and tries very hard." My body turned to ice. My loving wife couldn't stand it. The manner in which I engaged in sexual intercourse with her compelled me to ascertain the veracity of my suspicions. However, I was simultaneously reluctant for them to become aware of my presence. I came to the realization that my marriage had reached its conclusion, yet I remained in need of tangible evidence of her infidelity. I slowly opened the door, just an inch, so that I could observe the interior. What I beheld was the catalyst for the dissolution of every ounce of affection I had ever held for my wife. She was positioned on her back on the bed with him. My initial reaction was to rush to him and assault him physically, but I realized that such an action would result in my own incarceration. He instructed her to assume a position on all fours, and she promptly complied. As these events unfolded, I observed with keen interest as they engaged in sexual intercourse. I turned away, quietly closed the door, and proceeded down the stairs, eventually reaching the vehicle and lowering the garage. I proceeded to close the door and start the engine, subsequently pulling out of the driveway. "Dad, where are we going?" I inquired, feeling a sense of remorse. "I am experiencing a desire to retire for the night." "I understand, Shelby," he replied. However, I was correct in my assessment. The situation in the house is likely to exacerbate your current condition. I have only been in for a few minutes, and I am already feeling unwell. I am conflicted about whether to divulge the truth or to withhold it. I will take you to Grandma's for a few hours until the unpleasant odor dissipates. It is a 15-minute drive, he noted. The drive to my mother's house was a mere 5 minutes, yet it felt like an eternity. My mind was consumed by thoughts of my failed marriage and the imminent dissolution of my relationship with my unfaithful wife. I was filled with an overwhelming sense of despair, and I was consumed by the realization that I could no longer remain in this toxic relationship. As I sat in the car, my mind flashed back to the brief encounter I had witnessed mere moments ago. My wife, in her infidelity, had been lying in my bed, and I could not shake the image from my mind. I felt a surge of anger, and I slammed my fist on the steering wheel in frustration. I was overcome with emotion and began to weep. "My father, I am fine. I am merely affected by the overwhelming odor in the house. I am fine. Do not be concerned. I am fine." I left Shelby with my grandmother, informing her that I would retrieve her in a couple of hours. I did not divulge any information to my mother regarding my actions. I informed her that I would be returning from work shortly and requested that she keep an eye on Shelby until my return. I was tempted to go home and confront the couple, but I decided that I needed more than just confrontation. I needed revenge. Returning to my office, I began to formulate plans that would result in the permanent destruction of my wife and her boss. The electronics company I worked for had several divisions. Upon arriving at my office, I requested that my secretary ensure that I would not be disturbed for the remainder of the day. I then proceeded to contact my colleague in the security department, Dan Taylor. Taylor was an exemplary engineer and had been a close acquaintance since our college days. I informed him that I required his immediate presence, and he replied that he would come to me in half an hour. He arrived 20 minutes after the call. "Jack, come in, Dan. Please close the door. It appears that you have just lost your last friend." I am inclined to agree. I require assistance. "Jack, what is the situation?" "I have just discovered my wife and her superior was engaging in sexual intercourse with her in my residence, in my bed. I am at a loss for words. I would like to be, but I am not. I had to collect my daughter from her place of learning, and upon my return, there was a vehicle in my garage that I did not recognize. I surreptitiously entered the premises and discovered them in our bedroom on our bed. I was incredulous, but the evidence was irrefutable. This is an unfortunate turn of events. To whom it may concern. I am writing to provide a detailed account of the incident that occurred when I collided with another vehicle. I did not collide with the vehicle, however. I was compelled to leave my vehicle and wait in the car with my daughter after I observed the other vehicle's occupants together. I then proceeded to take my daughter to my mother's residence. I am seeking guidance on the best course of action moving forward. I am uncertain of the next steps I should take, but I am aware that I require tangible evidence to substantiate my claims. I require audio and video recordings of the incident. I appreciate your attention to this matter and look forward to your prompt response. Sincerely. Your name. Video footage of the next occurrence would be invaluable. It is therefore crucial to ascertain the optimal method of recording. This may entail the use of security cameras and microphones, or alternatively, more discreet means of audio and visual capture. The latter could include the use of small, unobtrusive devices that can be concealed in various locations within the residence to record events as they unfold. It is my belief that I can assist you in this endeavor, Jack. However, it is essential to determine the frequency of such occurrences. Is it a one-time event, or a recurring pattern? In the event of a situation becoming unruly, there is no possibility of avoiding confrontation. I am unsure if these meetings have been held on a regular basis over the past 6 months. However, I believe there is a strong possibility that they have occurred at my residence. It is likely that the individuals in question have been leaving behind a trail of evidence that they are unable to afford. Additionally, the woman in question is at home during the day, leaving only my residence and the children when I am at work and they are at school. We spoke for a few more minutes and then proceeded to discuss business. Dan informed me that he has access to a new beta line of wireless miniature cameras and microphones, that he also had a small voice-controlled recorder that I could place under the seat of Cher's car to record any conversations she might have while driving. While it would only record her side of the conversation, it was a superior alternative to nothing. I thanked him and stated that I would retrieve everything at his office the following day. Getting home that night was the most challenging experience I've ever had. I was uncertain as to whether I would be able to confront my wife and feign ignorance regarding the incident. I resolved that the most prudent course of action would be to feign illness, which was, in fact, the case. I collected Shelby from my mother and, upon my return, discovered that Sherry was preparing dinner in the kitchen. Upon seeing Shelby in my company, she expressed her displeasure, inquiring as to my whereabouts and demanding an explanation for my failure to notify her of Shelby's indisposition. I recently received a message from the school nurse on my answering machine. The school attempted to contact you, Sherry, but was unable to reach you. They called your office and were informed that you were unavailable. They then called your home phone and left a message. They even called you on your cell phone, but it went to voicemail. It is possible that I accidentally turned off my phone when I was showing it at home. I have not had a Sherry was afforded a brief period of solitude throughout the day. She had assumed that her attention was required elsewhere, namely, in the company of her daughter, Shelby. Upon seeing Shelby, Sherry embraced her and expressed her regret. She then assisted Shelby in getting into bed. While Sherry's wife may have been unfaithful, she demonstrated a profound love for their children. Sherry perceived herself as an obstacle to her wife's happiness. However, she was determined to alter this dynamic. After tending to her daughter, Sherry returned to the kitchen. To prepare her soup and complete the cooking of the evening meal for the entire household, I also felt unwell. I informed her that I would sleep in the guest room for the night, in case I was contagious. Sherry examined my forehead and stated that I looked sweaty and pale. I concurred with her assessment, noting that I appeared pale and sweaty as a result of discovering my wife engaged in sexual intercourse with another man in our bed. I did not respond. Instead, I turned and proceeded upstairs. I proceeded to the master bedroom, despite my initial reluctance. I required essential items for personal grooming, dental hygiene, and professional attire for the following day. I compelled myself to enter the room, noting that the window was open and the bed was made. It was evident that the sheets had been changed. I was overcome with distress at the sight. My imagination conjured images of him engaging in sexual intercourse with her anus while she expressed her arousal and claimed ownership of her anus. An indignant rage arose within me, yet I restrained myself. I needed to remain calm until I could exact retribution upon them. I gathered the necessary items and proceeded to the guest bedroom, closing the door behind me. I removed my clothing and climbed into bed. My body felt numb. I wanted to cry, but I forced myself to restrain myself. I had a mission. To complete the task at hand, I was compelled to remain objective and avoid allowing my emotions to impede my progress. I remained in the darkened room for several hours, deprived of sleep. My wife entered the room after she had fed the children and put them to bed. I feigned sleep, and she touched my forehead with her palm and departed, closing the door behind her. Sherry was responsible for taking the children to school, so I arose at an early hour, took a shower, and departed the house before she arose. I was not concerned with her thoughts at that moment. I simply wished to depart from what I had previously considered to be a fulfilling marriage. I had assumed that our relationship was based on principles of lifelong fidelity, honesty, and commitment. However, I now recognize the extent of my misperceptions and the tragic nature of my errors. Before the arrival of the office staff, I proceeded to my place of work, prepared coffee, and began to organize my plans. I was aware that I would have to cancel our joint credit card transfer, allocating half of our funds to another institution. I proceeded to transfer the joint checking and savings accounts to another bank in my name only. Additionally, I initiated the necessary changes to the will, life insurance, and beneficiaries in the 401k, removing Sherry and naming only Shelby and Ryan. It appeared that a relatively minimal effort would be sufficient to dissolve the last 13 years of my life. However, I anticipated that the process would be more challenging than I initially anticipated. Internally, I believed that it would be difficult, and I was aware that I needed to find a competent divorce lawyer. In order to avoid being discredited, it was necessary to proceed with a no-fault divorce. Adultery would not have been a factor in the financial settlement. However, it would have helped to ensure the safety of my children. Sherry demonstrated how insignificant I was in her life, but she was a capable mother, and I did not want to deprive her of custody of the children. I sought joint custody so that I could retain my status as an important figure in their lives. I made every effort to avoid doing so. Consider our personal lives and the humiliating experience of hearing my wife praise her lover as superior to me in every way. I was aware that allowing myself to dwell on this would lead to self-doubt, and I was determined not to let that happen. However, I knew that this would eventually affect me, and when it did, it would likely have a destructive impact. After finishing the list, I contacted Dan's office and spoke with him. He was available. He stated that he would have everything I needed by noon. He even offered to accompany me to ensure the proper installation and to provide any necessary guidance. I was attempting to prioritize the removal of various documents from my desk when my cellular telephone rang. I recognized the call as originating from Sherry. After 3 rings, I answered the call. Her voice, while previously warm, now conveyed a distinct sense of anger. In a voice that was both sweet and concerned, she inquired about her husband's well-being, expressing worry about his absence and the potential consequences of his actions. She then proceeded to list the numerous tasks she had to attend to, emphasizing the limited time she had to complete them. She implored her husband to prioritize his own well-being, and expressed her deep concern about his safety. She reiterated her love for her husband and children, emphasizing their centrality in her life. I reflected. I informed her that I would be fine and that she needed to cease dwelling on the matter. If she was prepared to act on her suspicions that night, I could suggest a course of action that would ensure her success. I had been so naive and gullible that I had allowed her to deceive me, but I had finally gained the upper hand. I would ensure that she received everything she deserved. I would simply have to bide my time. I am experiencing a sense of unease at my lack of interest in reclaiming what is rightfully mine. I must admit that I am currently facing a number of challenges. I will see you tonight. I anticipate returning home by 6 p.m. If you require my assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. I will be in the office throughout the day. I am grateful to have received this update. I contacted Dan, who informed me that he had completed the installation. We proceeded to implement the system and conducted a thorough examination by 3 p.m. 30. Dan proceeded to install the software on the home computer and create a secure folder for the purpose of collecting and storing all captured footage from the cameras and microphones. A comprehensive audio and video surveillance system was then deployed in the living room, kitchen, guest bedroom, and master bedroom, with particular attention paid to the latter room, where 4 cameras were installed and recorded nearly all activity. Additionally, a camera and microphone were installed in this room. In the main tub, all cameras were automatically activated by movement in case the couple decided to take a shower together after their sexual encounter. That night was the most challenging of my life. I was unable to persuade myself to engage in the same sexual act again. After dinner, when the children were asleep, I followed my wife into our room and we engaged in sexual intercourse. Jack, you have always been my primary sexual partner. To me, my life will be significantly diminished if anything were to happen to you. As long as I have you, I will not require the company of anyone else. You are my ideal partner, and that has always been the case. However, I do occasionally find it challenging to accept this reality. What is the source of your difficulty, Jack? Nothing, Sherry. I am simply fatigued. At a later point, I heard Sherry crying softly. I did not feel any sympathy for her, but I was curious about her situation. If she was crying out of shame for her actions or because she felt I was being discourteous, I rose before her and seized the opportunity to install a voice recorder under the seat of her vehicle. I also reviewed the video and audio from the installed equipment to ensure that everything we did at night was captured clearly, even in low-light conditions in our bedroom. When Sherry arose, she expressed displeasure at what she perceived as an insult, then embraced me with a kiss on the cheek, her demeanor transforming to one of cheerfulness. I postulate that her positive mood was influenced by her plans for the day with her superior. I offered her a cup of coffee and informed her that I would be confined to my office for the entire day. She informed me that she intended to spend the day viewing several properties and was confident that she would succeed in making a sale. She was optimistic about making a significant sale, but she would be able to collect Shelby and Ryan from school. I kissed her on the cheek and proceeded to the garage door, but Sherry said, "Jack, you neglected to inform me that you love me, my dear. You are aware of the importance of hearing you express this sentiment each morning before we embark on our days." "I am sorry, Sherry. I have already resolved to reveal my feelings for you. However, I have numerous considerations. I have forgiven you this time, but it is important for a woman to hear her partner express their love for her. I will not forget, and I have indeed told other women how much I love them. However, I will not do so again. I went out, and I will not tell another woman how much I love her. If and when I find another woman I can trust enough to fall in love with, I will not tell her how much I love her." The information Sherry gave me made me believe that she would be busy all day. This made me believe that she would probably spend some time with her true love. I was hopeful that this would be the case. I was tired of engaging in futile pursuits. I desired the conclusion of this unfortunate series of events. I spent the morning engaged in productive activities within my office, but I was distracted by my watch. At noon, I informed my secretary that I would be absent for several hours and initiated my plan of action. I inspected the company's van and parked it across the street from my residence. I then waited to observe the developments around 1. At 12 p.m., I observed Cher's vehicle arrive at the residence. She opened the garage door and parked in her customary location. Upon exiting the vehicle and entering the house without lowering the garage door, I deduced that she was either departing once more or awaiting someone. 10 minutes later, the same vehicle I had witnessed on the day of their encounter arrived at our driveway and entered the garage, taking my place. I observed the driver exit the vehicle and the garage door close. I was compelled to acknowledge their audacity in meeting so openly in my residence, even in my bed. This demonstrated to me that they both believed they would evade detection. Alternatively, they may have concluded that they were indifferent to the prospect of being apprehended. However, they will soon realize the fallacy of both assumptions. They have been apprehended, and I will ensure that they both experience genuine consequences. I will also have the necessary visual evidence to substantiate their illicit affair. For 13 years, I was convinced that my wife would never engage in extramarital relations, just as I would never engage in such relations with her. Consequently, I began to question whether the other man was truly a superior lover. I observed that he was no larger than me, perhaps appearing more attractive, although neither of us would have been considered particularly impressive. Why would she deliberately risk damaging our marriage and his marriage as well if she had to understand that I would undoubtedly inform his wife of their activities? I was impelled to enter the house and confront them directly. However, I was uncertain as to the potential consequences of such an action. While I would have been able to identify the infidelity, I had already done so once, despite the lack of awareness on their part. Would I feel better by resorting to violence against the other party and facing the legal consequences? I was not convinced that such actions would be justified. My primary concern was the impact of this situation on my children and his children. I was prepared to inflict the same pain and suffering on him that he had inflicted on me. 30. It would appear that the other party had finished, as evidenced by the opening of the garage door and the departure of the vehicle in question. 15 minutes later, my wife did the same, closing the garage door behind her. I was aware that she was returning home with the children, so I promptly parked in the garage and proceeded to my home office. I was not inclined to devote time to examining the captured cameras. My sole objective was to ascertain the security of the evidence I required on my hard drive. After 10 minutes, I had sufficient information. It was not a complete replication of the previous encounter, albeit with a more explicit visual representation. The couple initiated sexual intercourse on the kitchen table. The man, fully clothed, pushed his fully clothed wife to lie down and proceeded to engage in sexual intercourse with her in the same location where he had previously consumed his meals. They expressed amusement at the number of times they had smeared their mixed juices on the tablecloth, which would be in a state of contamination in a few hours. They then proceeded to move into our bedroom, although not before her, __. The lover proposed a change of scenery by engaging in sexual intercourse in my daughter's room. My wife was vehemently opposed to this suggestion. She asserted that it was inappropriate and that she was not willing to allow it. However, she did impose certain limitations, indicating that she was not entirely unrestricted in her actions. The couple proceeded to disrobe in the bedroom and engaged in sexual intercourse for approximately 40 minutes. It is noteworthy that neither of them expressed any form of romantic attachment to each other. However, my wife did convey to her superior that he was the epitome of excellence. The lover she had ever had. As a final act. Although I did not immediately comprehend why they relocated to the hearth rug in the living room, a brief excerpt from their conversation informed me that this was the site of their inaugural sexual encounter and that they enjoyed returning to this scene from time to time. These individuals had already created memories, which seemed incongruous with the fact that she did not take the time to change the sheets. However, I decided that she would do so when she brought the children home at 3 o'clock. 30. This afforded her sufficient time to clean and ventilate the room, as I rarely returned home before 6. I was aware that the evidence I needed was safely hidden on my hard drive. I turned off the system and left the house without even bothering to check the mess that was still present on my marital bed. I had seen enough, and although my heart hardened against my wife, I felt empty inside. This was soon replaced by a burning anger and hatred. In a state of intense anger and hatred, I smiled at the realization of the consequences I would bring upon their deceitful heads. I resumed my work and informed Dan of everything I had witnessed and heard. Like me, he was unable to comprehend how a seemingly loving wife like Sherry could engage in such actions. Not only had she broken our sacred vows to each other, but she had also attempted to heap as much humiliation upon me as possible. She had, in fact, been the most adoring and devoted lover throughout their 13-year marriage. When I broached the subject, she became enraged and informed me that such thoughts were revolting and unbearable to contemplate. These disturbing recollections caused me immense distress and anguish, compelling me to seek counsel from a reputable divorce lawyer. Dan recommended I was advised to contact the law firm that the company used to ascertain whether they could suggest someone. I spoke with one of the corporate lawyers at the firm, who provided me with 3 names of divorce lawyers who he knew had successfully defended her husband's rights. The first was preparing to retire and was not accepting new clients. However, the second agreed to make time for me the following day at 3 p.m. Subsequently, I resolved to cancel credit cards, change beneficiaries, and transfer funds upon my return home that evening. Sherry was preparing dinner in the kitchen while the children were engaged in their homework in their respective rooms. She was attired in a yellow sundress, and she appeared radiant. For a moment, I was overcome with emotion. She was smiling and seemed particularly cheerful. I deduced that this was her typical afternoon disposition. "Hey, baby," she said, "how's my man? I hope you had as good a day as I did." My day was somewhat intriguing. While not particularly exceptional, it did yield some noteworthy insights. I came to recognize several aspects of my partner's character that I had previously been unaware of. I was able to ascertain the source of her positive demeanor. It is plausible that the influence of a highly skilled partner can enhance one's overall experience. I facilitated a sale, which represented the first of the week. However, there may be another opportunity on Thursday when I showcase a few additional properties. It appears to be a fortunate coincidence. I conveyed this information with a certain degree of detachment. Is there anything else that stands out as noteworthy? In the course of my day, I encountered a number of individuals with whom I had previously established connections. However, when I informed her that my work was merely a means of supporting my family, she seemed to regard me with a peculiar intensity. While I was changing, I observed that the sheets had been changed and the room had been aired. I also noticed water on the shower floor. When I returned to the kitchen, I inquired about her showering habits that afternoon. She reacted with a startled expression and a sense of guilt, denying any knowledge of the incident. I am unsure of the reason for this occurrence, but there is water on the shower floor, and it never remains there for more than a few hours. It is possible that the sewer is clogging up once again, but I recently cleaned it. It is also possible that someone is entering our house to meet their lover and taking a shower after engaging in sexual intercourse. This time, she froze in place for a few seconds. She did not turn to face me, she continued to face the counter with her head down and proceeded to spread the lettuce leaves for the salad. "Jack, you undoubtedly possess a vivid imagination to devise such a scenario. Indeed, it is imagination that enables you to perceive the thoughts of others. If you could truly read my mind, you would understand the depth of my affection for you." She attempted to laugh, but her expression was strained. "I will be in my office. Please inform me when dinner is ready." She turned slightly and looked at me. She appeared concerned. The atmosphere at the dinner table was subdued, with minimal conversation. Sherry seemed taken aback when I took her customary seat at the table and compelled her to assume my position. "Jack, you have a tendency to consume your meals at this establishment at the table. Why the change of habit?" "It is simply a matter of embracing a change of scenery." Sherry regarded me with a peculiar expression, and when she took her seat, she did not consume much food. Instead, she rearranged the food on her plate during the course of the meal. The children discussed their day, but Sherry and I mostly listened, offering appropriate comments from time to time. After we all gathered to assist with the washing up, I returned to my office to continue working on my project. I observed the footage. I then selected suitable frames that I could transform into photographs, uploaded them, and printed them on my Epson 3000. I proceeded to choose the appropriate wording to accompany the photographs. My remaining tasks were to meet with my lawyer to initiate the divorce proceedings, organize my financial affairs, and await the return of my wife and her lover to my residence. When I finally retired for the evening, Sherry was already asleep, or at least feigning slumber. I was reasonably certain that my actions that evening had prompted her to reflect on the situation, although it ultimately held little consequence. She was unable to influence my decision to divorce her unfaithful partner. In fact, I believe her actions today, Tuesday, may have caused her some concern. She mentioned another sale on Thursday, which I interpreted as a sign that she and her lover would meet that day. I intend to destroy the evidence on the same day. The following morning, I arose early, showered, and left before Sherry woke up. I had a full day of activities planned, including a meeting with my lawyer, which was scheduled for 3 o'clock. I had sufficient time to address all financial matters. My initial stop was at the HR department, where I updated the beneficiary of the life insurance and 401k from Sherry to Shelby and Ryan. The woman who assisted me gave me some peculiar looks, but I did not feel the need to provide her or anyone else with an explanation for my actions. My subsequent step was to cancel all our joint credit cards and obtain a new one in my name. It was then necessary to proceed to the bank, where I transferred half of the funds from our joint checking and savings accounts to another bank in my name. I was aware that I had to take action regarding our house, but I was confident that the court would allow Sherry to remain there with the children, so I postponed any action on this front until I had the opportunity to consult with my lawyer at 3 p.m. I met with my lawyer and found him to be a competent legal professional. He informed me that there was a possibility that I would lose custody of Shelby and Ryan and that I would be required to relinquish the house and half of my other assets to my wife, even if I could provide evidence of her infidelity. I requested that he draft a request for me, and when he informed me that I would likely be unsuccessful in retaining almost all of my assets, I told him that I would proceed with my own strategy. I informed him that I was confident I could persuade her to consent to my proposals. He was disconcerted but acquiesced to my requests, stating that all documentation would be prepared for her to be served on Friday morning. I also requested that he draft the documents for filing a lawsuit against her employer and the company she co-owned. The documents were to be prepared for filing a lawsuit against her boss and the company he co-owned for the purpose of destroying my marriage. These papers were also supposed to be ready by Friday morning. I was ready when I got home that night. I was cold toward Sherry. In truth, I already had everything I needed, and I just wanted it to be over so I could live my life. I knew that there was still a lot of pain and grief ahead, but I understood that there was no turning back. In any case, I would finally share the pain and suffering with my wife and her lover. After a quiet dinner with a little conversation, I retired to my study, where I printed out photographs of the lovers I was going to use and the inscriptions that I would affix to them. I completed these tasks without interruption and also had time to write a letter to Greg Allen's wife, enclosing several prints of the large photographs that I used on the posters and noting that I have a substantial collection of videos to provide her in the event that she decides to divorce her husband shortly after 11 p.m. a.m. I proceeded to our bedroom to ascertain whether Sher was asleep. I then proceeded to her vehicle, retrieved the recording from beneath the seat, rewound it, and listened to its contents. I was only able to discern one side of the conversations, which appeared to include several business calls. However, one of the calls was to Greg, and it included the following exchange. "Hi my love, thanks again for this day. Me too, I always miss you after we were together. Yes, oh my God, a whole week together is going to be heaven. Maybe we can soon. We can arrange a real estate convention, which we must attend." There was no mention of the following. Although the pain was as acute as it had been in the past, she was unaware of the imminent prospect of becoming his exclusive property forever. Furthermore, the knowledge that within a day I would ruin their idyllic life imbued me with a sense of satisfaction. Revenge proved to be a potent elixir. I replaced the tape with a new one and placed the recorder back under the seat, where I hoped it would capture evidence of her anguish. On the following day, when her world came crashing down, I barely slept. This was not due to heartbreak, I had transcended that stage. No, I had trouble sleeping because I was anticipating the events that were about to unfold. On the previous occasion, I arose at an early hour while Sher was still asleep. I stood and gazed at the woman who was the love of my life, the mother of my children, and the woman I expected to spend the remainder of my days with. I experienced a sudden rush of tears as I came to the realization that I had engaged in sexual intercourse with her. I will never again engage in sexual intercourse with her. Furthermore, I will never again embrace her or discuss our future. We had no future together. As I turned and walked away, I considered the consequences of her actions. She was likely unaware of the price she would have to pay for turning her back on me. However, she will soon become aware of the implications of her decision. I proceeded to take a shower and subsequently departed from the house. I then proceeded to have breakfast at the local diner and subsequently made a brief visit to my place of work to inform the secretary that I would be absent for the remainder of the day. I subsequently contacted Dan and informed him of the impending developments. He wished me luck, advised me to exercise caution and requested that I keep him informed of the outcome. I then proceeded to my lawyer's office to ensure that all necessary arrangements were in place for my wife and Greg Allen to be served the following day. After this, I contacted my wife to inform her that I would collect the children from school. My mother had requested that they be at her residence for the long weekend, so I will be returning home at approximately 3 p.m. 45 to retrieve some garments and deliver them directly to my mother. My wife expressed her approval and, in her most dulcet tones, informed me that on Saturday we would have the opportunity to spend the day in bed. I informed her and terminated the call. I reached a point where I was unable to tolerate her trivialities. I was not in a hurry to return home by 12 o'clock. At 12:30, I parked my vehicle in a location that afforded me a view of my driveway. While my vehicle was largely out of sight, I was able to observe any vehicle that pulled up to my residence. I was not required to see the garage door open and close, as I was aware of the predictable routine of my wife and her romantic partner. At 12:50, I observed the aforementioned individuals engaging in their customary activities. I observed Scher's vehicle enter the driveway, followed approximately 5 minutes later by that of Greg Allen. I should have experienced discomfort at the knowledge that my wife and her superior were engaging in sexual intercourse with each other in my marital bed while I was situated a short distance away, awaiting their completion of this act. However, I found that this sensation diminished over time. I was astonished at my own composure when I contemplated the various scenarios I was aware of their participation in. At 10 minutes to 3, I observed, Allen's vehicle departing from the driveway. 10 minutes later, Sherry followed in her own vehicle. I noted that she was applying a new lipstick as soon as they left. I proceeded to the garage and closed the door. I had a task to complete, and the time was limited. I went to my office and checked. The audio recording of the afternoon session revealed that the couple was engaged in sexual intercourse. I proceeded to transfer the audio file to my computer's hard drive. Over the next 10 minutes, I transported all the photographic plates I had made to the front door, where they could be easily accessed. I then packed a toothbrush and some clothes for Shelby and Ryan and placed them in my car. The only regret I had was the pain I was going to inflict on the two children I love more than anything in the world. However, I was comforted by the fact that I did not cause them the pain that they will soon feel when they realize that their mother and father are no longer together. All responsibility lies firmly on their mother's head. It was she who decided to have a long-term affair and completely destroy her family. I proceeded to engage in a long-term extramarital relationship with the intention of causing irreparable damage to my family. I attended school at 3, at 15, I collected them from school and informed them that they would be spending the weekend with their grandmother. Given her penchant for lavishing them with excessive affection, they were delighted. 45 minutes later, I dropped them off and returned home, where I initiated the next phase of my plan. This brings us back to the initial setup: a bed, a table, and a carpet on the lawn. With all the neighbors were observing the situation, and Scher returned home, horrified, to learn the truth. I was aware of the events that had transpired. Despite my expectations, I did not receive any information from Sherry that night. An hour after Sherry's departure, the police visited me. They expressed sympathy but stated that I had to remove the signs and photos, otherwise they would have to take punitive action. For disturbing public order and obscenity, I removed them. They did what I wanted them to do. My wife saw them, and from the look on her face, I realized that her life had started to go to hell. I woke up on Friday morning with a world-class hangover. Despite that, I felt strong. I was sad and lonely, but I knew that I had the strength to bury my. After a period of intense anger and hatred, I resolved to take revenge on my unfaithful wife and her lover. At noon, I pulled back the curtains on the window and observed that the carpet, kitchen table, and bed had been removed. Only the mattress and soiled sheets remained. I considered removing or burning the remaining items later. The remainder of the morning passed without incident. However, by 3, at 12 p.m., the situation rapidly escalated. I was certain that Greg Adams' wife had received the letter and photographs that morning. My lawyer subsequently informed me that both Scher Adams and his business partners had been served at their respective workplaces. He stated that he was present when they were served and that Scher had screamed and fallen to the floor, sobbing. Adams, for his part, had reacted by becoming visibly distressed. He disregarded her presence entirely, moving about the office with a demeanor that could only be described as aggressive. He proceeded to label me a bastard and threaten my life. However, his colleagues promptly secured themselves behind closed doors for a period of 15 minutes. Upon their return, they presented Sherry with her final remuneration and informed her that her services were no longer required. They also extended a similar gesture to Greg, presenting him with a check for his portion of the partnership. He informed them that he had no intention of selling to them. They cited the section of their corporate charter concerning morality with employees, noting that the charter granted them the mandate and right to sever all relations with him and his mistress simultaneously. The receptionist informed him that his wife was on the phone and demanded she receive the letter and the photographs and sought to reassure him, informing him that she would file for divorce the following day. Subsequently, I was informed by the husband of one of the agency employees that, following his departure from the premises, those present turned their attention elsewhere, avoiding any contact with my former partner. The wife was observed to be lying on the floor for approximately 30 minutes, during which she was seen to be sobbing and moaning. At one point, she appeared to regain her composure sufficiently to leave the building, although the destination was unclear. The following day, Sherry finally contacted me. Her voice was noticeably distressed, and she inquired about the whereabouts of the children. I informed her that the children were in the care of my mother and that I would not divulge any details of their situation. She expressed gratitude for this and then requested permission to enter the premises and retrieve some of her belongings. I granted her this request, stipulating that she inform me of the time she wished to come in. For several hours, while she gathered the items she required, she requested my presence and an opportunity to converse. I informed her that I had no further messages for her, which prompted her to begin weeping once more. She then expressed her remorse, stating that I should be aware of her regret for the pain she had caused and that her actions had not been intentional. I found the situation to be somewhat amusing. It was difficult to comprehend how he could express remorse for Sherry and yet intend to cause me pain. My initial reaction was to congratulate him and his partner. I was reluctant to reveal my feelings to them, as I had never loved anyone other than Jack. I sensed that he did not fully comprehend the depth of my feelings. Sherry, I am at a loss to comprehend your actions. After informing your romantic partner of the profound impact he had on you, and how he was the only individual capable of fulfilling your emotional and physical needs, how could you then engage in sexual intercourse with another man? Jack, I have never made such statements. It is inconceivable that you would believe otherwise. I have recordings of you saying all this to him, Sherry. I have a video of him using you, and you like it. You tell him that you will never give me this privilege because you were exclusively his property, even after telling him that several times. On numerous occasions, I attempted to engage in sexual intercourse with her, but she consistently rejected me, stating that it was repulsive and unthinkable. I have comprehensive documentation of these interactions, including audio and video recordings of her explicit and detailed descriptions of her sexual encounters with other men. Regarding my husband, I have no comment to make to you, Sherry. Your statements cannot alter my sentiments toward you, even slightly. I love you, Jack. You must accept my enduring love for you alone. I am unsure of the motivation behind my statements to Greg. I did not intend to convey any ill will. I was merely attempting to bolster his ego, given that he frequently informed me of how his wife had subjected him to humiliation. Therefore, let me clarify, you persistently humiliated me in his presence, disparaging me in my feeble attempts to engage in sexual intimacy, with the sole intention of reinforcing his ego. Your actions were motivated by a desire to alleviate his suffering. However, your actions also involved the exploitation of his situation for your own benefit. Over the past 6 months, you have used him in various ways to achieve your own ends. I never intended to cause you harm. My actions were not intended to cause you distress. If there was no intention to cause harm, then why did you engage in these actions? I am unsure, Jack. It appeared to be a morally questionable act, and I felt compelled to engage in similar behavior with Greg. I needed to maintain a distinction between my relationship with you and everything else. You are a highly questionable individual, Sherry. I am surprised it took me so long to recognize this. I am ashamed. I acknowledge my own culpability in this situation. I do not love Jack, I love you. I implore you, Jack, if you are willing to consider giving me a chance to rectify the situation, I will do my utmost to prove my sincerity. I recognize that I have made a mistake, but I believe that we can still salvage our relationship. I am willing to demonstrate my willingness to reconcile. Please, Jack, I implore you, do not abandon me. I am sorry, Sherry. I do not love you, and I did not leave you. You are the one who initiated our separation. The hurtful and humiliating things you said about me and the way you treated him for over half a year prove that you do not love me. It is impossible to love someone and wish them such pain. I believe you are a morally reprehensible individual, Sherry. You are a deceitful and immoral cheater, and I eagerly anticipate your departure from my life. Do you truly believe that I would want anything to do with you after you betrayed me and promised your fidelity exclusively to him forever? I would not even touch your revolting body. If you were the last woman on earth, the only reason I would ever have anything to do with you would be for the sake of our children, Shelby and Ryan. We created them when we were still a family unit, and you were complicit in their upbringing. I want to spare them as much pain as possible, but I don't want indeed, I wish for you to experience the full extent of the pain you have caused me. Both you and your partner, Greg, are deserving of such pain, and I wish for you to feel it fully. Why did you inform Greg's wife about this matter, Jack? It was not fair, and it is not fair. Are you completely insane, Sherry? What you did to me and our children was unfair. What on earth made you think that was an appropriate course of action? One might inquire as to whether I informed her of the aforementioned details. In response, I would posit that there are three primary reasons for my decision to divulge this information. Firstly, he has effectively destroyed my family by repeatedly engaging in sexual intercourse with my wife. Secondly, he has assumed control of the only body on this earth that I previously considered to be exclusively mine. Thirdly, he has compelled my wife to attest to his exceptional qualities and to denounce me as an indifferent individual. The potential consequences of this disclosure are uncertain. However, it is likely that his wife will seek to ascertain the truth about her husband's actions. The manner in which she will respond to this information remains unknown. It is important to note that I share custody of our children. I am empathetic towards the children of my former partner, but my primary concern is for the well-being of my own children. I do not wish to see them subjected to a future without their father. Father, I hold both of you responsible for this situation. I refuse to accept any blame. I do not desire a divorce. Jack, I will fight for the preservation of our marriage. There is no justification for ending it. To be frank, I would rather die than be confined to a life with you. I am aware that you hold me in high regard, Jack. However, your feelings cannot be simply dismissed due to the actions of one individual. It is evident that you are delusional and irrational. Have you read the divorce petition that was submitted to you? There is no reason for me to do so if you are willing to listen to reason and allow me to make amends. If you are unable to do so for me, at least do it for Shelby and Ryan. They require a mother and a father, Jack, they will always have a mother and father. We just won't be married or live together in the same house. If you had bothered to read the petition, you would have seen that as long as you agree to joint custody of our children, you can stay in the house and have half of all our worldly goods, which this is not included in the petition, but I am now informing you that if you do not sign and agree to the terms that I am offering, I will share videos of the two of you with every person you have ever known, including your parents, your sister, her children, and any other person I can remember. Jack, it is evident that you harbor a considerable degree of animosity towards me. However, I must clarify that your assumption is erroneous. I am capable of harboring intense negative emotions, and I am determined to inflict irreparable damage upon you if you continue to resist. I am fully capable of expressing such intense negative emotions towards you, Sherry. I implore you, Jack, to reconsider your actions. Sign the divorce papers, Sherry. Sherry, please sign the divorce papers. The subsequent events are as follows: Sherry signed the papers, and the divorce was finalized after 6 months. She subsequently took up residence with Shelby and Ryan in the house we once shared, while I relocated to a condominium a few blocks away. Our children attend the same school district, so there were few despite the disruption to their schedules. The children were affected by the divorce. Shelby informed me that their mother had acknowledged that she had made a significant error in judgment and that our marriage was untenable. However, we both reassured the children that we would continue to be a source of support for them. I am unaware of the details of the conversation between Sherry and her family. She did not inform her parents or sister about the dissolution of the marriage. However, given that they were in communication with me, it seems that she did not blame me for the failure of the marriage. My mother regarded the situation as something that neither Sherry nor I could overcome. I had one final opportunity to retrieve the audio recording from Sherry's vehicle. The content of the voice track was noteworthy during this journey. Upon returning home, she contacted Greg and expressed gratitude for the enjoyable day. However, she also intimated that she believed he might suspect something and proposed postponing their plans for a couple of weeks until she was certain everything was in order. Upon arriving at the house, she was perplexed by the presence of numerous individuals in the street and observing their activities in our yard. When she saw the signs and photographs, she was overcome with anguish, screaming at the top of her lungs. As she departed, she repeatedly asked, "What did you do, Jack? What did you do?" It appeared that the gravity of the situation suddenly dawned on her. Her narrative shifted to one of disbelief and distress, uttering, "Oh my God, what have I done?" and, "Oh God, please, what have I done? Please God, make it all go away." She proceeded to contact her romantic partner, who answered. She then exclaimed, "He knows Greg. Jack knows everything about us." She subsequently engaged in a prolonged period of emotional distress. It has been over a year since the sense of overwhelming anguish swept over us, and I am now attempting to reassemble the shattered fragments of my life. I have not yet initiated a new romantic relationship and am unlikely to do so for an extended period. The prospect of embarking on a new serious relationship fills me with trepidation, as I am still grappling with the pain and trauma of my previous experience. Shelby shared that her mother had once gone on a date, but she returned home in tears and, as far as she knew, never dated again. Sherry found employment as a secretary in a retirement village. I never discovered whether she was in contact with Greg Allen, and I am indifferent to the matter. Greg Allen and his wife divorced, and he was unable to secure employment. It is evident that, despite my decision not to forward the video to any individual, its content was disseminated. Sherry was aware of my lack of benevolence towards Greg. It appears that numerous organizations are reluctant to employ individuals with a reputation for seducing married women and subsequently causing their marriages to collapse. I obscured Sherry's face in the video, but retained the audio. I recently became aware that Greg's former wife is currently involved in a romantic relationship with a police officer, which appears to be progressing in a serious manner. This is a positive development for her. Regarding Greg's former company, in order to avoid negative publicity, they made me a substantial financial offer to refrain from legal action. I accepted this offer and, as far as I am aware, the matter is currently resolved. My primary focus is on my children and their future. At some point, I may also prioritize my own future.